Find the first few terms of the Maclaurin series for secant z. So secant z is 1 over cosine z, and cosine z is even, meaning cosine of negative z is equal to cosine of z, and that means that secant of z is even as well. This tells us that the Maclaurin series for secant of z is only going to contain the even terms. That should be a 6. So let's see if we can find C0, C2, C4, C6. So what I'm saying is C1, C3, C5, etc. These guys are all 0. Okay, so what we're going to do is multiply these two together and get 1. So secant of z times cosine of z is equal to 1. Secant of z we will express like this, and cosine of z we have a Maclaurin series for that. So C0 plus C2z squared plus C4z to the 4th plus C6z to the 6th, etc., times the cosine of z, which is 1 minus z squared over 2 factorial plus z to the 4th over 4 factorial minus z to the 6 over 6 factorial, etc., is equal to 1. So now let's just do a little bit of multiplication here. Let's look at the constant term of the left side. The constant term on the left side is going to be C0, the constant term here, times the constant term here, C0 times 1, and that will equal the constant term on the right side, which is 1. And this equation tells us that C0 is equal to 1. We'll put that in the box. Now we'll look at the square term. The square term on the left is negative C0 z squared over 2 factorial when we multiply this one and this one. And then also it's plus C2 z squared times 1, multiplying these two. So those are the possibilities for getting a z squared when we multiply these together. And that's got to equal 0 z squared, because there's no z squareds on the right. So the coefficient of z squared here has to be 0. So negative C0 over 2 factorial plus C2 is equal to 0. So C2 is equal to C0 over 2 factorial, which is 1 over 2 factorial, because C0 was 1. So C2 is 1 over 2 factorial. Let's see if we can find C4. So let's look at the fourth powers. On the left, to get a fourth power, we'll do a 0 power times a fourth power, the second power times a second power, and a fourth power times a 0 power. So we're going to get C0 times z to the 4th over 4 factorial, and then plus C2 z squared times minus z squared over 2 factorial. That's going to give us minus C2 over 2 factorial, z to the 4th, and then plus c to the 4th, z to the 4th times 1. So plus C4, I should have said, not c to the 4th, C4 z to the 4th times 1, C4 z to the 4th. And this is equal to, on the right side, we have 0 z to the 4th. So 0 z to the 4th. So our coefficients add to 0, C0 over 4 factorial minus C2 over 2 factorial plus C4 is equal to 0. So C4 is equal to C2 over 2 factorial minus C0 over 4 factorial. Now C2 is 1 over 2 factorial, so this is 1 over 2 factorial times 2 factorial, and then minus C0 is 1, so 1 over 4 factorial. And we need a common denominator here. Maybe we want to think of these as being numbers, particular values. 2 factorial times 2 factorial is 4. 4 factorial is 24. So we have to multiply the first fraction by 6 over 6 to get the 4 factorial on the bottom. So we get 5 over 4 factorial. This is C4. C4 is 5 over 4 factorial. Now let's try one more. Let's see if we can get C6. So in order to get a C6, we need the sixth. We need the degree 6 term. So to get to the degree 6 term, it'll be a 0 times a 6, a 2 times a 4 times a 2, and a 6 times a 0. So it's going to be C0 times negative z to the 6 over 6 factorial. And then a 2 and a 4 is going to be plus C2 over 4 factorial times z to the 6. And then a 4 and a 2 is going to be minus C4 over 2 factorial times z to the 6. And then finally, it's going to be plus C6 z to the 6th. And this is equal to 0 z to the 6th. So our coefficients add to 0. So C6 is equal to the negatives of those. So C0 over 6 factorial minus C2 over 4 factorial plus C4 over 2 factorial. Let's plug in what we know so far. C0 is 1. C2 is 1 over 2 factorial. C4 is 5 over 4 factorial. Okay, these two have the same denominator, so let's just add those. This is 1 over 6 factorial plus 4 over 4 factorial, 2 factorial. And let's cancel this 4 and the 2 factorial. That leaves us with 2 on the top. And now the common denominator of 6 factorial, we have to multiply 2 over 4 factorial by 5 times 6 over 5 times 6. Now the bottom is 6 factorial. So we get 6 factorial on the bottom, and we get 30 times 2, 60 plus 1, 61 over 6 factorial. This is C6. So we have altogether secant z is equal to C0 is 1 plus z squared over 2 factorial from C2 plus 5z to the 4th over 4 factorial from C4, and then plus 61z to the 6th over 6 factorial from C6, and etc. So there's a few terms of secant z.